Welcome to another unboxing from theplayersaid.com. My name is Grant. Today I'm unboxing a new game that actually I just received this week all the way from France. The game is Napoleon 1807, and it is from a company that I was not familiar with until a couple of weeks ago called Shakos or Shakos. I'm not really exactly sure. This game it's a war game. It is in the Conqueror series. And I think it's the second game in the series, the first game having been Napoleon 1806. So this game is called Napoleon 1807, and I do not read French, but I know that says the campaign in Poland. So this is a war game where Napoleon's army fights in Poland against the Russian alliance with Prussia. So it is that Napoleonic style war game. This is a greatly produced, very well produced war game. I'm not a big fan of the art style, but I think it looks nice. But the box is really good. The components are great. I've already opened it up and tried to take a look at it. But this thing has some weight to it. Part of that is because it does have blocks. And it does not use the blocks in the Columbia War Games style with hidden information where one side doesn't see the other units. The blocks represent armies, and then on player aids that I'll show you here in a minute, and you can see them right here, those player aids are where you track the health of your current army. They're actually called fatigue points. And you track the makeup, whether they're made up of just infantry and how many, or infantry and cavalry, and how many of those units. You'll track that on that player aid. So a really interesting looking game. We have played a lot more Napoleonics over the past couple of years. The game is a two-player game. It can be played solo, where one player plays both sides. The game plays in approximately 1 to 2 hours. It says 90 minutes. But this does offer 13 scenarios. 3 of them are battle scenarios that play in about an hour. And then there are 8 additional ambitious campaign scenarios. And then 2 scenarios that link this game with 1806. I think the very last 2 scenarios require you to own both this game and 1806, and you play them together. So really ambitious. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. But yeah, once again, really nice components. I was very impressed when I initially opened this up, and actually quite surprised. So the first thing you see here is a quick setup guide. It just gives you an understanding very quickly of the different components, the scoring table or victory points table. Talks about how to play, move, and combat. Not an overly complex game by any means, but it does obviously take some rules. The map is huge. We'll fold that out as a mounted map. But when you do the different scenarios, you're only going to play certain parts of that map. The campaign game, you're going to use more of that map. But I thought this was a really nice way to kind of boil the rules down into the most important elements. Here's how to do combat, and they have some graphical descriptions of that. Here is fatigue, and it talks about how that's earned. You'll notice here there are cylinders put to represent that fatigue, and then here's the differing units. But we'll talk about that. But a really nice kind of a quick start guide there that'll get you playing fairly quickly. These are the stickers that are to be affixed to the blocks. These are obviously the light blue are the French commanders, for lack of a better word. Here you have Napoleon and other generals, and then the white are the Polish and the Prussian generals there represented, and then here's some other flag units. So these are going to be affixed to the blocks. We'll look at the blocks here in a minute. They're really nice. I like to sticker blocks. So let's go ahead, and the first component you see is the mounted map, and I'm going to have to rearrange things here because this map is huge. I unfolded it and I was quite shocked at how big it is. It's got 3 panels across, so it's a big one. You're asking right now, what's Grant doing? Well, I'm struggling to open up that map and lay it down. So there you go. That's the whopping map. And I can't even get it all in the camera, frankly. I'll try to get as much of it in there as I possibly can. But you can see it's pretty big. It's daunting. It is a point-to-point movement map, so you can see these points. And like I said, in the scenarios, you're only going to use parts of the map. So one scenario, you may only focus up here on the left, the upper left side of the map. Or you may go, in another scenario, over closer to Warsaw, etc., and move around the map. The campaign map, you're going to use a little bit more of that. So really nice looking. The detail, you can see that the woods are represented by nice coniferous trees drawn on the board itself. The rivers are very clear. The lakes are bodies of water. Bridges are clearly outlined. The roads are very clear, connecting the different points. I feel like it's a really well done map. There is the turn track over here, which I think is the coins there on the map itself, and a place where cards are to be held for each player. There's a compass in the upper left that tells you where north is. North is the left side of the map, and the south is the right side. So that's the map. Really well done. It's a very nice mounted map. There are 2 books. One is the rule book here, and then the other is the scenario book. And if you remember, I said there were 13 total scenarios. So you can see there's scenario 1 and 2, and they're flipping through. They show a map that shows you where you're supposed to lay your units out. And then it talks about the areas that you're going to use there on the map. So very clear. I think the scenarios, I was surprised that it had this many scenarios, 13 scenarios. I think the first game in the series only had 1 or 2. So that's been a big change in this entry in the series. They've added more, but here's the rule book. The rule book clocks in at 19 pages. Here you go, 19 pages there on the bottom. The rule book is fairly dense. There are some examples. Like here you get a picture, an example of movement. Here's some other pictures shown on the bottom. It seems to be fairly well organized. Here's the sequence of play. You've got your rules of how to get units and how to stack them. Talks about the playing cards and gives a good description of them, how they're used and what the different numbers mean. Here's a look at the general components, and I'll show you all of those. But yeah, really, the rule book's not overly complex. 19 pages isn't a lot. There are a lot of wood bits, cubes, discs, markers. They even have citadels, wooden citadels. There's some dice. There are control flags. So really nice components, but there's a look at that rule book. Here are the screens that players use to hide their player aid that show their armies. It reminds you of the different elements, the game sequence, moving, combat, how commanders work, etc. But I keep hitting the camera, I'm sorry guys, but you go ahead and set it up like that. And then here you have these double-sided army cards or player aids. Here this is Friedland under Napoleon, and then Eylau here. So let me lay that out. I'm not going to go into every depth of the game, but I did think this was very interesting. And there are 3 of those. And they look to be of the different commanders, but they're double-sided. So I'm not sure. Some commanders appear in some of the scenarios and others do not. So let me go ahead and just show you really quickly. So there's a ton of wood. These are the actual units themselves. Some of the units. And these are, maybe I should flip it over. These are the Prussian units. So here you can see on that card, it's going to tell you, oh, you have 5 green cubes, which are infantry, and then 2 pink cubes, which are cavalry. And you're gonna simply lay those out in the top row. So the unit disposition, Bagration here, he has 2 cavalry, he has 5 infantry. So he's going to have a whole bunch more units than some of those others. And the reason you kind of lay them out like this is that depends on how many cards you're going to get when you battle. So you can see it takes up 5 spaces and 2 cavalry. That means you're going to get, if you can see that, you can see the 2 cards. So when they are battling, they're going to get 2 cards that are used in the battle. And then you'll notice the second row on the bottom, and that is where you put the cylinders that represent the heat, fatigue, or damage. So as that is accumulated, you're going to, and they don't work really well. I think they should have just done a different color of cube. But, you're going to get 1, 2, 3, and you're going to start getting worried. You can see the skull here is that fatigue number. So that's how you're going to use these player aids, and you're obviously going to keep those away from the view of your opponent. You don't want him to know exactly how many units you've got. And then, as I mentioned earlier, your command blocks, and here's a look at the French and some of the Prussian. Those are going to have those stickers affixed to them, and that is how you're going to denote their location on the board. So here, let me remove that. But you might have a couple of Prussian commanders with their armies here, and then on the other side you're going to have a couple of French units spread out in different locations, and they're going to have stickers on them. So you're generally going to know who they are, but you're not necessarily going to know exactly the disposition of that army. I think that's a nice element. But yeah, you can see there's a lot of wood here. That's partly why the game was so heavy when I lifted it up. There's also these very interesting looking control flags. Let me get those out for you, as well as discs. But that's a control flag. Looks like on a green, the hole marker. But you're going to put those out when you control certain key areas. There's green ones as well. But you can see there's a bunch of those. And then there's discs that will be used to mark different elements. And I mentioned at the beginning, here you can see some of the citadels. Here are other markers. I'm not exactly sure everything about those, but those green, they look very similar to the castles in Pendragon from GMT Games. You've also got arrows, you've got some red cubes, and then some pawns. So those are also included. And then you have these custom dice. And like I said, I've not read all the rules, but I'm going to go ahead and get those dice out. So here you can see, looks like each side has five dice. And they're normal 6-siders, but they have these other markings. They have a pip, and then they have this cross. So you're going to roll those, and then those mean different things. Here is the French dice. I'm always a big fan of custom dice. It just adds an interesting element when you're going through these games. But I'm going to go ahead and say it. This is a very well-produced game. I think it's very, very nice and probably well worth the price that's paid. There are also 2 decks of cards. Here you go. French and then the Polish or Prussian. So I'm going to try to open these, and I'm having trouble. I always have trouble with these packs of cards when I'm doing these unboxings. But this is in essence a card-driven game. You can see there's some op points, and then there are events that can be taken. Once again, didn't read everything. Some of these are used in combat. Some of these are used to move, and then some to conscript and build your armies. So you can see there's quite a few cards. Here, we'll just take a look at an example of one. They are coming. The Prussian player receives Russian reinforcements according to the scenario's instructions. Card used only with scenario 13. So there you can see it's only number 13. So that's an interesting element as well. You'll need to make sure and include the correct cards with each scenario that you're playing. But yeah, there's a lot of cards. A lot of cards included. And once again, those are used as a part of that game. You've got those screens there. I didn't show you these bags. I assume that there are elements that you're going to draw out of that bag. I did not read all the rules before I did this unboxing, but these are really nice bags. Maybe you don't draw, maybe you just keep the units in there. So yeah, really nice though. I like a game that's well produced. I like a game that looks nice on the table, and I think this does that with both. Does both of that. So yeah, that's a look at Napoleon 1807 from Shakos, a French publisher. We received this. This game came out in 2020, so we're going to try to get this one played as we put together our top war games of 2020 video and list for the blog. But yeah, there you go. The designer is Denis Savage and Nicolas Triel. I hope I said their names correctly. You can see those there on the front. Once again, this is a part of the Conqueror series. And obviously these first two games in that series focus on the Napoleonic War. So yeah, there you go. Napoleon 1807 from Shakos. Thanks for watching. I've been Grant for the Player's Aid.